welcome back to Reading Club. So today I'm going to read you Daisy in the Trouble with Maggots, chapter 11 to chapter 15. Chapter 11. The trouble with seeing a pile of fishing clothes at the end of your bed is it makes you stop being cross, but start getting really excited again instead. Which is even more annoying, because then you definitely can't get to sleep on Saturday night. Even after 4 bedtime stories, I couldn't get to sleep. Even after counting fish jumping over a hedge, I couldn't get to sleep. Which is why on Sunday morning, I woke up at 2:15. The trouble with waking up at 2:15 is it makes your mom really grumpy if you wake her. I know, because I've tried it before at Christmas. So I didn't wake my mom up at all. I just got dressed into my fishing clothes and went downstairs to find the dirty bucket. The trouble with dirty buckets is you can't take them fishing unless they're clean, especially if you're going to put fish in them, because fish don't like dirt, especially shed dirt. Our red bucket was really covered in shed dirt. So I really had to clean it at 2:30 in the morning in our kitchen sink. The trouble with cleaning a dirty bucket at 2:30 in the kitchen sink is once you fill the bucket with water from the taps, you can't lift it out because it's so heavy. So you have to really huff and puff and lift and strain and pull until the trouble with buckets coming out really fast is it makes you drop them, which means they splosh and splurge and splosh all over the place, which isn't your fault. It's the bucket's fault for having a slippery handle, or the water's fault for being so heavy. Luckily, none of the bucket water splashed on my fishing clothes because I managed to jump out of the way. Trouble is, it went all over the kitchen floor instead. The trouble with kitchen floors is they're not really meant to be wet. Especially at 2:30 in the morning. Kitchen floors are meant to be dry at 2:30 in the morning and 2:45. So I decided I'd try and mop it. The trouble with my mom's floor mop is the handle is too long, which makes it really awkward. And the mop doesn't squeeze out very easily, which makes it really heavy. Plus, the heavier it is, the harder it is to lift it up to the sink. I thought after about 3 mops of the mop, all the water on the kitchen floor would be gone, but it wasn't. There was still loads of water everywhere. Even after about 5 or 6 lots of mopping, the mop still hadn't worked properly and mopped all the water up, which totally isn't my fault. So I decided to go back to bed without doing the rest of the mopping. Trouble is, my mom woke up at 3:15. Double trouble is, she needed a drink of water, which is why she went downstairs to get one, which is why she walked into the kitchen in her nightie and in her bare feet. The trouble with walking into a wet kitchen with your nightie on and bare feet is, it kind of makes you slip over onto your bottom and scream or get a soggy bottom and soggy legs and soggy elbows, which kind of was my fault, which is why I pulled my bed covers over my head and pretended to be asleep. Except mom came upstairs into my bedroom and turned my lights on and pulled my bed covers back, which meant she saw I was dressed in my fishing clothes, which is how she knew it was my fault that the kitchen floor was wet. Plus, I hadn't put the mop and bucket away either. "Why is the kitchen floor all wet?" she shouted. "And why are you wearing your fishing clothes? It's only 3:20 in the morning. And what is that filthy bucket doing in my sink?" I told you moms get grumpy if they wake up too early in the morning. Chapter 12. When I got up for my breakfast, I decided to stay out of the kitchen, which is a good job really, because the floor didn't dry out till about 9:30. My mom didn't stop doing her own special frown until 11 o'clock either, so I was really glad when my Uncle Cleve and Auntie Sue arrived to pick us up in their car. I couldn't wait to get in Uncle Cleve's car when he arrived at our house. Uncle Cleve's car is much bigger than our car. It can fit all kinds of fishing things in it and picnic things, plus 4 people, plus my red bucket too. Except Uncle Cleve said I wouldn't need the bucket because he had a proper fishing net we would use to keep fish in instead. So I put the bucket back in the shed, well, near the shed, because I was in a hurry to get back to the car. When we got into Uncle Cleve's car, Mom looked really funny. She'd stopped frowning, but her eyebrows still looked really wonky. That's because my uncle's long green bag with the fishing rods was right in the way of her head. And it was so long and so big, it was squishing her hair and her earrings and everything. That's the trouble with fishing rod bags. You have to be quite short to sit next to them. So in the end, me and my mom swapped over seats. The trouble with having a fishing rod bag near the top of your head is it's really exciting. It really makes you want to open the bag to see the fishing rods inside, even if you're still in the car and you haven't got to the river yet. Trouble is, the bag was all zipped up. Plus, my mom told me not to touch it. So all I could do was feel it with my hair and my imagination. When we arrived at Paper Mills Lock, my hair and imagination were really beginning to ache. When I saw the river, I nearly whipped myself. Once Uncle Cleve had parked the car in the car park, we all helped to unload it. The trouble with unloading cars is I never got to carry any of the best bits. I really wanted to carry Uncle Cleve's great big rod bag or his huge green box of fishing things with a strap. Trouble is, they were too heavy, so I carried the picnic blanket and my hoodie instead. The trouble with picnic blankets is they're really itchy. At least Auntie Sue's picnic blanket is. It felt a bit itchy when I first started carrying it, but by the time we had walked past Paper Mill Pool, through the gate, past the lock gates, past the cafe, and right up past the river boats, Auntie Sue's picnic blanket had nearly itched my arms off. Luckily, I didn't have to sit on it later because Uncle Cleve had brought me a special fishing chair to sit on instead. He showed it to me when we arrived at the place we were going to fish in. Special fishing chairs are really important when you're fishing because they mean you can sit really comfortably right up close next to your fishing rod. I know, because guess what? Uncle Cleve had brought me my own special fishing rod to fish with, too. You should have seen it. It was even longer than me. Chapter 13. The trouble with fishing rods is there are all kinds of different ones to choose from. Uncle Cleve said that if you haven't been fishing before, then the best type of fishing rod to start off with is a smallish one. Smallish fishing rods are especially for beginners. They come in 2 pieces, but they still look quite big when you push them together. There are lots of special things that you need to bring if you're going to go fishing for the first time, and Uncle Cleve had brought them all. As well as a whip, and as well as the maggots, I needed a long piece of fishing line, plus a fishing float, plus a teensy little colored rubber band, a box of fishing weights, and a fishing hook. At first, I didn't really know how any of the fishing things Uncle Cleve had brought were meant to work. But when my mom had finished putting my sun cream on, Uncle Cleve showed me how to join them all together. It was brilliant. This is what my Uncle Cleve told me I had to do. Step 1. Push the 2 pieces of your fishing rod together. Step 2. Put your fishing reel onto the handle of the fishing rod and make sure it's nice and tight. I got Uncle Cleve to put my reel on. Step 3. Pull the metal bit on your fishing reel back and pass your fishing line through all the little circle on your rod. I got Uncle Cleve to do mine. Step 4. Pull the line so it reaches from the top of your rod right down to your knees, and then push the metal bit on your reel back the other way. Uncle Cleve says the metal, it is called a bail arm. I got him to do the bail arm bit too. Step 5. Thread the line through the hole in the little rubber band. Step 6. Push the fishing float through the rubber band too. Then thread the end of the line through the circle at the bottom of the float. I did all the other steps by myself. Step 7. Now the float is on. Slide it up the line with your fingers. Step 8. Tie a hook to the line using a really, really good knot. I got Uncle Cleve to tie my hook knot too. Step 9. Pinch the right amount of fishing weight onto the line with your fingers. Step 10. Then get ready for the maggots. Chapter 14. Maggots. Wiggly, tickly maggots. At first, when Uncle Cleve took the lid off the bait box to show them to me, I thought, no way. There is no way I'm touching a maggot. Then, when my mom and Auntie Sue saw them, they nearly dropped their glasses of white wine. Mom said that maggots were the most disgusting thing on earth. She said they were filthy and horrible and yuck. But after I'd watched them wiggling around in the bait box for a while, I realized they weren't filthy at all, or horrible, or yuck. They were just maggots, and actually, they looked quite clean. Uncle Cleve said that when you buy a pint of maggot from a fishing shop, they put sawdust in the bait box to keep them comfy. Maggots love sawdust and really hot sunshine. Really hot sunshine makes maggots wiggle even more. In fact, it makes them about the wiggliest, tickliest thing in the world. After about 2 looks, I started to really like them. In fact, I was thinking about taking one home to be my pet, but Uncle Cleve said that it wasn't a very good idea to get too attached to a maggot. He said the only thing that should get attached to a maggot is a hook. The trouble with hook is I never put a maggot on one before. In fact, I never even picked a maggot up. So Uncle Cleve showed me how to do it. Actually, he picked the maggot up for me and then put it in the palm of my hand. The trouble with having a maggot in the palm of your hand is, well, at first you want to drop it because you think it's going to wiggle and tickle all over you. But actually, it doesn't feel that wiggly, tickly at all. If you make your hand into a cup shape, it just wiggles around in your palm really lightly and stays there without you even hardly feeling it at all. Which is really neat. Uncle Cleve showed me that there are 2 ends to a maggot. There's a thin end, and there's a fat end. The fat end has 2 tiny dots on it like eyes, except they're not, and the thin end has got a little black line inside it, like a brain, except it isn't. It's the fat end that you have to put the hook in. Once I'd done that, it was time to cast my fishing rod out. Chapter 15. The trouble with casting fishing rods out is it takes lots of practice. If you don't pull your middle bit back before you do it, the fishing line won't come off your reel. Plus, if you let go of the line at the wrong time, you might get into a tangle. I reckon you might even hook yourself up the nose with a maggot. Uncle Cleve said that the best thing would be for him to cast out for me. He said the more I watched him do it, the more I would see how to do it. So I let Uncle Cleve do my casting out for me. You should have seen how good he was at doing it. He got my float to land in just the right place every single time. Even his first cast went in exactly the right place. All I had to do was sit in my special chair and wait for a nibble. The trouble with nibbles is I thought I was going to get one straight away, except I didn't. Uncle Cleve said that there is one other important thing you need when you go to fishing, and it's called patience. Patience means waiting for a fish to bite your maggot. Uncle Cleve said that we were in a really good fishing place, but we might have to wait a while for the fish to get hungry. When he threw some extra maggots into the water right next to my float, Extra maggots help to make fish extra hungry. Then Uncle Cleve said that he was going to set up his new rod, and once I got the hang of things, he would cast out a maggot too. Then we would have 2 chances of catching a fish instead of 1. Uncle Cleve's new rod was different to mine. It had an actual fishing reel on its handle with loads of line and everything. That's because Uncle Cleve is a fishing expert. He knows how to do fishing reels and everything. And he knows how to do rod rests. Rod rests are rests for your rod. Uncle Cleve pushed 2 into the ground right beside my seat and then showed me how to rest my rod on them. There you go, Daisy, he said. You're all set up. Now sit tight and watch your float. And remember, if your float goes under, it means you've got a bite. So I did sit tight. I sat in my special fishing chair with my rod on my road rest, and I looked at my float, and I waited and waited for at least about 3 minutes. The trouble with waiting for at least about 3 minutes is it really makes you want a sausage roll. So I asked my mom if I could have one, and she said I could, as long as I cleaned my hands first with a wet wipe. So I did, and it was yummy. Not the wet wipe, the sausage roll. The trouble with eating a sausage roll is it makes you want to have a Scottish egg. So I asked my mom if I could have one of those too, and she said that I could. So I did, and it was yummy too, especially the yellow bit in the middle. The trouble with having a Scottish egg after you'd had a sausage roll is it makes you want to have a jam tart. So I asked my mom if I could have one of those too, and guess what? She said I could. I told you picnics were great fun, didn't I? Except then I got really, really thirsty. So I asked my mom if I could have a glass of cherryade too, and she said I could, but I had to come and get it myself. So I didn't, because I couldn't, because I was fishing. That's the trouble with moms and picnics. Picnics make them even lazier. They're so lazy, they can't even get up off the picnic blanket and walk about 2 steps across the grass to give you a drink of cherryade, even if you really, really need one. Luckily, Auntie Sue brought me some cherryade instead. Otherwise, I'd probably have died of thirst. The trouble with cherryade is it's really wet, especially if you drop it in your lap. It wasn't my fault I dropped my cherryade in my lap or over my trainers. It was my uncle's fault. He was the one who shouted, "Strike Daisy," not me. The trouble with someone shouting, "Strike Daisy," is if you don't know what "Strike Daisy" means, you don't know what to do. So I just jumped and dropped my cherryade. While Mom was wet wiping the stickiness of my jeans, Uncle Cleve told me that while I was looking at my cherryade, the fishing float had gone under. Which means I had my first nibble. Trouble is, I wasn't looking at my float when it happened. I was looking at my cherryade instead, which is why Uncle Cleve shouted, "Strike Daisy." Strike Daisy means pick up your rod quickly, Daisy, and lift it up into the air, or the fish will get away. Not drop your cherryade in your leg, Daisy, and all down your legs, which is what I did. At first, I was a bit embarrassed, but Uncle Cleve said not to worry. He said everyone misses their first bite, and he was sure the fish would come back and nibble my maggot again. And guess what? He was right. Well, that's the end of this channel. If you liked it, please click many likes and subscribe Reading Club. I'll come back later with a new and improved channel. Bye, everybody.